Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Think Your Way to an Epic Life. And today's guest, Stephen Shortt, comes to us from Ireland. So he's a lot of fun just in general. Irish people just are happier. There's something to that. If you are an employer, an employee, an entrepreneur, anything to do with career, you really want to see this podcast. He has a system that is unbelievable that will help you understand the careers that you might not have even thought of. You might not even know that it could be a career. And so he's putting people in the right place and he's helping employers get the right people so that the world is a happier place. Hope you enjoy. So Stephen, thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Well, of course, anytime. And we are very excited to have someone who comes to us from Ireland. And in your accent doesn't seem as thick as a lot of Irish people. Is there a reason for that?
So, yeah, first of all, I was born in Saudi Arabia. So I grew up in an American compound for the first couple of years of my life. So some people think I have a slight American twang. But for 25, 30 years, I was working in one of our family businesses, which was an English language school, an ESL school.
Uh-huh.
English is a second language. So I kind of felt I needed to be a little bit easier to understand than maybe some of my compatriots. I've been to parts of deepest, darkest Ireland, and I have trouble understanding the accent sometimes. So if we're dealing with somebody who's just arrived off a plane from Tokyo, you need to be a little bit clearer.
It is. It's amazing. I had a roommate once from Ireland, and it took quite a while before I could fully understand all. It's like I'm going to go down and get a dime, something about and it's just like what did you what did you say? Okay, so you are
But the other
into.
thing that we were just talking about before we started recording here is in America you call it cursing, in the UK they call it swearing, and in Ireland we call it just talking. So we have a natural way of communicating which is internationally accepted.
It's very good. And every person I've ever talked to that has been there, and it is on my bucket list, but everyone that I've ever talked to has said it is the friendliest place they've ever traveled to. That it's like Irish people just have that hospitality, come in, we love you kind of thing.
We had a student that we actually had it. We used to do these marketing interviews with people on video for promotion. And one of the students said that he's from Italy. He's from either Milan or Rome or one of the big cities, big bustling cities. And he said he used to love playing a game in Dublin. He'd been studying for about 3 months, and he used to love playing a game in Dublin. He knew where he was going. He knew everything, but he would just stand on the busiest street, on O'Connell Street, on the main street in Dublin, and take out a map. And he would count how many seconds it took for somebody to come and offer to help. So you just don't get that in other parts of the world. So that's something that I think is not unique. I mean, I think people in general are good. I just think that there's a cultural bias towards just being friendly here because we're small. I think it has something to do with the fact that we're small, and in Ireland, police officers, for example, aren't armed, which for Americans can seem a little bit crazy. Like none of our police officers have weapons. Well, have guns anyway. And the biggest threat that a police officer, the biggest deterrent that a police officer can shout at you instead of like stop or freeze or something is, I know your mother. And that's the terrifying bit of, oh my God, he's going to rat me out to my mom. So we're pretty small, and we're friendly because of that, I think.
That is so cool. That is so cool that knowing your mother in America a lot of times means your mother's going to come knock the cop out because they weren't polite to the criminal kid. So
Yeah, no.
I'm sorry, Americans. It is where we are at the moment. We're working on it. We're trying to get better. So anyway, you came on this podcast because you want to make this world a better place, and you're focusing mostly on business. So can you kind of give us your tagline?
Yeah, so this is something that I spent quite a bit of time figuring out and working out what my why was. What's the whole point of me being here? There's a million and one ways to make money in this world. So what do you want to do? What do you want to spend your time doing? And what I want in my personal mission, and as the mission of my businesses, is to make the world a better place with happy people in fulfilling, rewarding careers.
Happy people in fulfilling, rewarding careers.
Careers. Yeah. So the business side of it currently is the one that's looking after the fulfilling, rewarding careers. So we do career guidance for individuals. We've built a framework and a software for people to be able to go do a series of assessments, and we will be able to give them a short list of very, very specific careers based on their competency and their criteria that they will enjoy doing and be good at based on their unique mix of interests and abilities, a description of that career and how to go about getting into it. So as they really understand what's the best path for them. The other side of that then is we work with companies for selection. So we use personality profiles, we use aptitude tests to be able to make sure that the teams and the people that are coming into the company are the right fit for the role, for the people they're looking for, and the company culture. So we help to make sure that those two things are aligned, so that matching the right people with the right career on both sides of it. And then lately, and I think the reason that we might have crossed paths is I've also come up with this thing called the Happy Work Life Map, which happy being an acronym of how we can live a happy life, because I've been pretty focused on the happy people side of that mission for the last year, and figuring out how we can do more of that.
Okay, and that is brilliant, because you also have a website that's very fun. We've got a couple of them, but it's Why You Hate Your Job. And so, why is it, Stephen, that people who are intelligent, they've got it going on, they're smart, and they hate their job and they're still doing it, and not even thinking that maybe I could go do something else? What is that about?
So there's two big things that are at play here in that kind of scenario. First of all, probably the more, not tragic, but the sadder of the two is that they're trapped. So they've come a certain way along a career, and it's maybe the wrong career for them. It might not even be the wrong job. It just might be the wrong industry or the wrong company, the wrong culture. Like it doesn't mean just because you hate what you're doing right now, if you're a marketing manager in one company, that if you change to a marketing manager in a different company, you won't be ecstatically happy. It's whatever you're doing right now. But people have this real fear of, well, I got a mortgage now, I got kids in school, I got a lot of bills, I got this, that, and the other. I can't take a pay cut. I can't take a risk and do 6 months of doing X, Y, and Z, or going back to college, or even imagining going back and doing a night course. And that to me is the sadder part of it, because then you're just going to spend the next 20 years being really unhappy before you feel either A, you're let go, or the company dissolves, or something beyond your control means that you now have to make that switch, or B, it just burns you out so much that you just go off, F it, and have a breakdown, and then go find something that you're actually passionate about. A lot of people find this later in life when they go into teaching, for example. They have a complete break from corporate world and they go into teaching. They probably shouldn't be in teaching, but it's just such a difference to them that they enjoy the idea of giving back and helping and shaping these young minds. But actually, if they'd had something else which is more aligned to the actual part of that role or that job, they could have had a much more fulfilling career from an earlier stage, doing something more important for them.
Okay, so tell us one of your favorite success stories that you've helped someone with.
I mean, we used to have an awful lot of people in Ireland in particular, because Ireland has the headquarters for like Facebook, for Meta, for Google, for all these places. The European hubs are here. So in Ireland in the 90s and the 2000s, we had so many people, so many young people going through college, and basically everybody was telling them, do computers, do computers, do computers. There's loads of money. There's going to be like unicorns everywhere. And we had a lot of people going through and doing IT and doing programming, and they just weren't suited for it. They weren't the right people for it. They felt, I'm like a half a step ahead of my boss. I'm under huge pressure. I hate doing this. I like the people that I'm with. I don't connect with them. I don't have shared values. I don't have shared interests, and I'm really hating it. So the amount of times that we would have people would come through our offices for career guidance, and we'd start to show them, or we'd say, okay, well, what about this career? And they'd read the description of the career, and you could see their eyes just light up and go, I didn't even know that was a thing. How do I do that? So they go off and they can either retrain, or we can show them like, okay, well, this is how you might go in, maybe at a lower level, but you take the experiences that you have, because 80% of people can do 80% of the jobs. It all comes down, everything comes down to interest. Talent is just interest. And then how can you parlay that, and then set them off in a trajectory that is going to lead them ultimately to be happy in a fulfilling, rewarding career.
Talent is just interest. That I've never heard that before.
So 80% of people can do 80% of the stuff that's out there in the world. There's very few jobs. Like, okay, you want your brain surgeons to have beyond average dexterity, for example. You don't want them going in and sneezing and there's, oops, now you can't use the right side of your body, for example. But most people can do most things. It all comes down to interest. And the people, so my nephew, for example, lives in Spain, and he's on his local basketball team, like the A team, and looking to go to national competitions and things like that. He is naturally tall and he's naturally athletic, but he's naturally athletic because he goes and does it. He's interested in basketball. So he goes out and plays basketball. Instead of sitting around watching stuff, he's interested in just bouncing the ball. He finds pleasure in it. So he goes out, and instead of going out with his buddies to go just sit on the park, they go out to the basketball court. So they play and they practice. So his interest gets him to go out to do more than somebody else who has a passing interest in basketball. The other thing, which is really interesting, is he's constantly thinking about basketball. He's constantly thinking about, oh, that jump shot that he made, or that pass that he made, or he watched somebody else make a pass. And in his mind, he's role playing and he's thinking about it. And he's playing video games and he's watching videos of basketball. He's still watching movies and all the rest of it. But he spends an extra 2 hours a day because he's interested in basketball, thinking about it for his subconscious. Now, somebody can think about basketball all they want, but if they don't go out and practice, they're not going to get anywhere. But somebody who has maybe more natural ability, who's stronger than him or taller than him, if they don't have the interest in basketball and they want to play something else, they're not going to develop as well as he's developed. The same is true in business. If you're in marketing and you spend a lot of your time, your free time, even just thinking about marketing or noticing, oh, I'm really interested in messaging, and I'm really interested in, wow, that's a really interesting ad and how they phrase that. That's really interesting. Because you're interested in it, you're thinking about it, you're naturally getting better and practicing. So the talent that you have is actually a translation of the amount of interest you have in that process, in my opinion.
It makes so much sense. It totally does, because there are people who are just obsessed with something. And this is one of the things that I'm a coach, and I tell people, as far as like YouTube and all that, is turn on your camera. You really may think that what you're doing is boring, and to a lot of people it might be, but there are people out there. There's 8 billion of us now. There are people out there who are going to be so enthralled with the fact that you're sewing a quilt, or that you're digging a ditch, or that you're, whatever it is, there are people who are going to be interested in it. So your interest naturally makes you better. It gives you the 10,000 hours and then some.
Yeah. So just funnily on that point, it's something, another thing about why people hate their job is they're in the wrong job. And it just popped into my mind when you were talking about that. There's an interest in everything. So when we were in school, when I was in school, the career guidance counselors in school, they had, even at that stage, an outdated frame of reference as to what exists in this world, because they're teaching, they're working, they're supporting students. They don't have the interest to be keeping up with everything that's going on. And what's a gantry technician? What's a Bitcoin miner? What is an esports game? What is all this? So they don't have the interest in that, whereas we do. So we can give people that information. The people who are in these the wrong careers for them, 99 times out of 100, it's because they got completely well-meaning but outdated advice. So what worked for their parents is just not going to work for them. And exactly to your point, there are people who have YouTube channels on what could be considered the most bizarre, obscure hobbies, but they have 10,000 people around the world who want to see them and buy merch from them, or get sponsorship, or donate money, or do something else. And you can make a really good living in really niche areas now. So there's nothing to stop people from really living the life that they want to live, and spending their time in a career that they hate.
It's so true. And there used to be a lot that held a lot of people back. There was a caste system, and it was very real. And if you were born into you cannot change. That is your life sentence, basically. And now it's talk about democratization. YouTube and all these platforms where anyone can go out there. They don't have to get the okay, which brings me to the whole management thing that we were talking about a little bit earlier, is the top-down management style. How much life is left in that?
Um, so I remember when I first joined. So I've grown up in two family businesses. I talk a lot about family business stuff, but I grew up in two family businesses, and I went. I remember going and doing one of these new manager courses, and I'd because I'm in a family business, like we had such tiny, like there wasn't really hierarchy. Although when I joined the family business, there wasn't a lot of hierarchy, but I knew I was at the bottom of whatever hierarchy we had, and had to work my way up. That was fine. Um, but the thing which really appealed to me was this notion of a spider organogram instead of a hierarchical organogram, that it kind of radiates out in all directions. It's not just a top down, because you're moving and there's lots of different pods, and it's more like a network than it is like a pyramid. And instinctively, I found that much more appealing and much more, yeah, because then you can be here, but you can also be around there, and you can do this and you can do that, because we're so really human beings are so flexible. It just, I think, took an awful lot of time, maybe more time than humans would have liked, for the technology to catch up. But then when the technology caught up and COVID happened, we had no choice but to allow this to happen. And now we have these enormous networks of companies. I mean, half of my business, two of my team members, two of my core team members, don't live in Ireland. They're working completely remotely, living in foreign countries. I think the rest of the team, I think there's only two of us that are in the office every day. Everybody else is 1-2 days a week in the office. And so long as we're aligning on the key meetings that we have, like each team has one meeting a week, and then we have a daily huddle where we just make sure that we're all touching base, and then everything else is more organic.
And that does work. And the old style, what at least what I'm seeing in America is, and I love it. I genuinely love it, because I was raised in that top-down management style. Raised, I should say, but in the work world, that's how I
But we
came
we
up.
were all raised and educated in that same fashion.
Hmm.
So that's where the I think the delay in changing those paradigms are, because we all from a very young age are have that kind of indoctrinated idea of, you don't answer the teacher back, and you work by yourself. Whereas actually now it's much more project based, it's much more collaboration, it's much more, you're not going to necessarily see something through. You're going to look at this part of the project, and then you're going to hand it over to somebody else, and you're going to have that communication and collaboration and empathy and all the rest of it, which is not really what's taught in schools.
No, no, it's not. And it's so crazy because when you do that, you are robbing yourself of the people who are on the ground who know the answers. And you're in your ivory tower, you don't have a clue, and you make these decisions that roll downhill without going and saying, hey, what do you think? Like what the, and it's there are story after story of someone who was the janitor or the cashier or whatever that came up with this incredible idea that made billions of dollars for their people. So so when okay, so let's take someone through. Someone says, "Okay, I'm really interested. I have no idea what I want to do. I know I hate what I'm doing." What are their first steps?
First things I would do is to start making a list of what are the things that you enjoy doing in work. Because I mean, no job is just, if it is utter like hell on earth and nothing is enjoyable, you should have been gone a long time ago. That's a very facetious way of saying it. But what are the things that you enjoy doing about work? What your current role? What are the things that you like? Then start thinking about, what are the other jobs that sound appealing to you? But the kicker in this is, oh, I'd love to be a cop. I'd love to be a marketing manager. I'd love to be a CFO. I'd love to be whatever. That's great, but they're only titles. What you need to spend a bit of time doing then is actually figuring out, what do you understand to be a large part of that role? Because you're saying, oh, I want to be this, because subconsciously in your brain, you think, I like the status, or I like the interacting with people, or I like the community stuff, or I like the numbers, or whatever it is that's actually the component of that job. That gives you a real insight into what areas you should be looking at and what career families you should be looking at. Then I would always recommend going and talking to a career guidance counselor, doing an assessment like ours, for example, to give you real pinpoint accuracy on it. But having those conversations with people, because trying to figure it out on your own, you have to go and research like 1,276 careers that are out there in the world. You have to understand which is which, what level is suitable for you, what interest areas, and what the job actually means, because the amount of times that people go into jobs and don't actually understand what they're actually doing. So going to an expert and going to a professional who can help you with that, even over 1 or 2 sessions, can give you an immense amount of clarity. But if you can do a little bit of thinking first, not daydreaming, actually working out what is it that I want in my career, that's an amazing, that's a really beneficial start for you.
Okay. So as an employer, how do you hire the right people?
So to be honest, a lot of employers are really bad at hiring the right people, because, and it's not the employee's fault when they come in. A lot of the time it's the employer's fault, because they haven't actually done the work to understand, what do I actually want? What need do I have in this role? Is it, we need a body because our marketing intern left, or our marketing manager left, so we need, sorry, I go to marketing a lot because I'm in marketing, but our marketing manager left, we need another marketing manager, quick, put out an ad for a marketing manager. That'll get you a body. But if you spend the time to actually write down your person spec and your job spec, but before you write the person spec and the job spec, you need to figure out, what's the purpose of hiring this person? What do you want them to be able to do? So the overall, how does it fit in with the overall desire of the company? What's the objective of the company, and where do you see this person taking you over the next 3 to 5 years? That's the person you hire, not the person who's here now. So you want the person who's going to be able to bring you to that point. Then you have the job spec as what's actually involved in the job. And then the person spec, what does the ideal candidate look like? Are they people focused? Are they numbers focused? Are they exploration? Are they optimization? Are they, what are the different areas, and what are the things that you actually need? What are the values that you have, if you have them? And if you haven't done that work, even if you're not looking for somebody, I would encourage people to go and do a little bit of work on, what are the values? What's the mission? What's the whole point of people coming to your job, to your place of work every day? And when we're advertising, we start with, these are our values, this is our core mission, this is who we're looking for, and this is why this person is going to be a fit, and why they're going to be successful. So if you are this, and this, we'd love you to apply, because here's what we need you to do. So we start by really self-selecting people out who, like, our core values: do the right thing, humbly proud, and inclusively empathetic. There are people who will read that and go, oh, that's very touchy-feely, don't want that, because we're a very people person centered organization. So that's not going to work. So that's what I would encourage. Sorry, that was a very long-winded answer for a very pointed question, but I think it's making sure that you know where the company wants to go, understanding what that role is. So it's the role first, and then what type of person fits that role, and then starting to look for that person.
Yeah, I'm with Keller Williams, and they call it missing persons report. And so that you actually, like, who am I really looking for? What do I really want? And so often we hire out of convenience, because it's your aunt and she's living right there and it's going to be great, and then it's not great. It's what
Or we get two people, and one person is 10,000 a year more, and you're looking at it going, I can't really stretch that. This person will do for now, on hoping that person will grow to what the other person will, but will probably take more than $10,000 to be able to get them to that level. So
right, yeah, and that's a risky thing, that's kind of like marrying someone and saying, I know I can change them into who I want them to be.
well, there is that old adage of men and women both get married thinking that men think that the women won't change, and women think that the men will change, and both are wrong.
Had to think through that one for a second. Oh my gosh. Okay, so you do talk an awful lot about family businesses, because it's what you know, and the person you can help is the person you used to be. So, for all of our listeners who are in a family business, what are some tips, some tricks that could help them be more cohesive?
So I've grown up in two family businesses, and I built a framework, the 5-step process for successful succession. What I will say, more often than not, the thing that I get, and I get contacted mostly by next gen entrepreneurs who are looking to try and take over, and the current gen are just holding on or not able to let go. What I like to talk about here is the hero's journey. Are you familiar with the concept of the hero's journey? So every story has the hero's journey, and they start off in the normal world, and then they go into the special world. And before they go into the special world, they always meet a mentor or a guide or a widget or something that helps them. Think Yoda in Star Wars or Dumbledore in Harry Potter and all this kind of stuff. For me, entrepreneurship is that special world. That's where we go into when we enter that special world. And current generation entrepreneurs who are very risk averse because they've blood, sweat, and tears into this, they have a different view of the business than next generations do. And both sides need to understand that. They are still on their hero's journey. They are still in that special world. What I try to do is encourage current generation entrepreneurs to come back to the real world once they've finished their hero's journey, and to become the mentor of the next generation's hero's journey. And that's how we can keep that cycle moving, where the current generation comes back, acts as the mentor, so as the next generation can go on their hero's journey and start thinking, as Arthur Guinness from the famous Guinness Brewery said, think in terms of generations yet to come. So thinking about that, and that's why my keynote of Build a Killer Family Business Without Killing Your Family, the logo is a cycle with an arrow.
Okay. So how, I mean, like,
Sorry,
because you're
made
good.
the mistake of giving an Irishman a microphone.
I love it. I love your accent. I'm having a great time, and we're learning a ton. So when you have that person that isn't ready to let go, and it's so funny that we're talking about this right now. Well, I'll tell you offline why, but when that person's ready, they just don't want to let go, yet they are letting go. They're going on more vacations. They're not engaged the way they were. How do you help them see that?
So the one thing that I've discovered, and I've really found this a lot, and when I sold one of our family businesses, I actually struggled with this myself, which is why I'm able to recognize it in current generation entrepreneurs. The current generation entrepreneurs, a lot of them have an enormous part of their identity and their self-identity wrapped up in what they do, because that's what we as entrepreneurs do. We define ourselves by what we do. We put so much into our business. So if you're saying, so my case, an English language school owner, if somebody's asked me, oh, so what do you do? What's this? What's that? I would define myself as an English language school owner. If I am not that anymore, what the hell am I? So for current generation entrepreneurs to really start thinking about their identity that is not tied to what they do, so as they can understand they can still be an entrepreneur. And the way that I was able to think of it is, I was then thinking of myself as an entrepreneur who owned a language school. So I still had the same skills. I still had the same benefits. I was still able to mentor people, still able to coach people, invest in companies, all the rest of it. But I'm an entrepreneur as opposed to a specific industry entrepreneur. And that has given me a huge amount to be able to understand the complexities of current generation. It's also why we see a lot of people, when they retire, they get very old very quickly, because once they retire, they kind of they feel they have no purpose. And that's my argument, is you don't retire because you get old because you retire. Because if you don't have something to do, if you don't have some kind of a purpose, sit and wait for death, for want of a better expression. I mean, my folks are 82 and will be 80 next year. Very active, leaving a full life. They're still semi-involved in the board decisions of the business, so they still have day-to-day purpose and activities and beyond. So they keep themselves very busy and proactive. But I also know people who have retired who just kind of sit every day at home. And so current generation entrepreneurs, I think that's the bit that they struggle the most with, whether they can articulate that or not. So when I sit down and talk with them, I start getting them to think about, well, what's beyond, what's next, where you can still be adding value, getting an immense amount of satisfaction and happiness through other activities.
Shoo! Wow. Okay, so you basically, you have the program that people can just go on to, pay whatever, and take these tests and know narrows it down. These are the 5 jobs that would be perfect for you.
So we give
16
careers. Yeah, we give a list of 16 careers, because we do have personality elements within it, but there are some people. So let's say you might get, let's say you get journalist and you get chat show host as 2 careers in it. Because we don't have like massive introvert or massive extrovert and Personally, there's no such thing as an introvert or an extrovert. We're all ambiverts. It depends on the context. But there are people who will feel more comfortable behind the wall of a blog post or a news article, and there are other people who will feel much more comfortable like this, having a conversation on camera, broadcasting out to the world, and comfortable going, "Oh well, maybe you shouldn't have said it that way," but people understand what I said. So there are different things, and there are different points in your life where each will be perhaps more appealing. So that's why we give 16. It's not too big that it's still this insurmountable thing where you have target confusion, but it gives you a list to go, okay, I'm going to pick this one. And then maybe in a few years' time, I might start moving towards that one, because it does still feel a huge interest area in my life. And I have the ability to do it.
Huh. Gosh, it's got to be fascinating and mind blowing just to see what.
Oh no,
what.
It's phenomenal. It's amazing.
How did you build it?
So it's my father who's the occupational psychologist. So that's why he's still actively involved, as I said. One of the things, so we've been doing this as a service, using other people's tools and kind of taking information and knowledge from other places for 40 years. One of the things that my father really came to realize about, where are we? Probably about 10, 12 years ago now, that there was a huge swathe of society who were typically in the lower socioeconomic, lower educational end of the spectrums, who were just not well served by the assessments that were out there. If you were over to the more practical side of things, it was, well, we don't have anything for you. Good luck. So he started building a tool specifically for that cohort, to be able to show people, okay, you're not academic, but you still can have a real impact and contribute and all the rest of it. Then once we had kind of built that area out, it was much easier then to do the other bits, because there was so much research and everything else that we could lean on the other side of it. So now our assessment will help everybody, from the very practically minded people to the future STEM career people. So it's everybody on that spectrum will get a list of up to 16 careers that are ideally suited for their unique mix of interests and abilities, so they can have a trajectory to start. And even if they're starting in the more practical side of things, we also remind them that, like, once you get that knowledge within the business, you can then go upwards in that industry. So it's not to say, oh well, that's it, you're staying at the ground floor. It's how people can progress, because that's how we make the world a better place, with happy people and fulfilling, rewarding careers.
I love it. So, at what point did your company go from just helping people locally to being worldwide?
So we are probably, since COVID, we rebuilt the Career Fit platform since COVID. Now because of the language school, we've always been kind of internationally minded. We've always been had an international focus. My wife is Spanish. I grew up in the Middle East. I was born in the Middle East, grew up in Ireland, spent some time in America. So for me, it has always been international. But in the next 2 years is when we expect to see the real big expansion into North America in particular. So we're in Ireland and the UK at the moment for career guidance. And with the selection process, the selection part, the assessment that we're using right now, we only use in Ireland. So one thing that my father is doing is building our own personality profile to be able to use for the selection process. And then we can go everywhere.
82 and still just like, let's kick it out. Let's do this.
So let me tell you, he's 82. My mother is 79. She won't want me telling you that, but he doesn't mind. Right now, they're on holiday. They just sent photographs into our family WhatsApp from the helicopter ride they got over the Grand Canyon, because they're in Vegas on holiday, because they've never been and they wanted to see. And today they're at the Hoover Dam, and they're just traveling all around that part of the world and just loving life.
That's the goal. And that seems to be what you and your family business, your companies are here for.
Yeah. So funnily enough, yes, we've kind of come to this. We've been very much focused on the career side of things, but the happy framework that I'm just releasing at the moment, the H in happy is highlights. So what are the future things? What are the things you want to look back on? What are the adventures you want to go on? What are the places you want to visit? All of these things. So being able to articulate the highlights as part of your happy map, that's such an important part of it. And it really also helps you to figure out your careers as well, like what kind of areas you want to go into.
Okay, so the happy life, Happy wife. I've heard that all my life.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, no, the
And
other way around is how I've heard it actually. Happy wife, happy life. But I mean, we won't get
happy
into that right
happy
now.
wife, happy life. Yeah, there you go. Happy wife, happy life. So but that is true of all humans. And
Hmm.
so when
Yeah.
when you're around someone who is unhappy for whatever the reason is, it is impactful. So how does it feel to be running a company that is here to really change, make this world a better place?
It is. I mean, it's inspiring. It's great to have this mission, which is bigger than any one of us. For me, it's great to have a thing of well, it's not about me getting up on stage talking about how wonderful I am. It's actually me getting on stages talking to people about how they can make their lives better. So in that hero's journey, I'm the mentor for them, giving them the tools for them to be the heroes of their story. And it's really inspiring. It's also phenomenal I did a workshop in the Netherlands last week with 16 to 24-year-olds who were the kids of one of the network that I'm in. Their parents are in this network, and we did a thing for their young adults. And I had a couple of the kids coming up going, this was like amazing. Even just thinking about, because one of the P's is people, like thinking about the people that are actually important to me and realizing I'm actually spending time with people who I don't want to be spending time with. And that's having a dramatic impact on my overall happiness in the direct. I don't want to be going in that direction, but I am, because I want to be with these kind of cool kids. But actually, I want to spend time with these guys who help me be a better me. And being able to have those conversations and help those young people come to that realization at 16, 17 instead of at 34, 35 is phenomenal. And it's hugely gratifying.
34, 35, 50, 60, 70. I mean,
Yeah.
really, people wake up. It's the people you spend the most time with, you become like them. And if you're not enjoying it, limit the time. I'm not saying that you cut them out, but limit your amount of time with them. That's very cool. So let me ask you, Stephen, what question have I not asked you that I should have so far?
Oof. Maybe what the rest of the letters in happy stands for, because it might be able to help people to think about how they can get that list for themselves. Um, so the happy map, the happy work life map is happy. H is highlights. So when you look back in your life, what are the things that you want to have as highlights? Starting a business, getting married, working in a specific company, traveling to this country, whatever it is, whatever those highlights are, put them down. Then appreciation is the A. So what are the people and the events that have helped you to get to here, both positive and negative? So difficult times that you've come through that have helped to shape you. The first P then is progress. Progress is the habits that you need to start building or the skills that you want to learn to help you progress towards those highlights in your life. The second P is people. So people has two parts. One is the people that you want to spend your time with and the people that are most important to you. Like I had this conversation with this young man. But the other one then is, what are the traits in the people you admire? Because from a psychological point of view, when we admire traits in other people, it's more often than not because we want to develop those in ourselves. So what are the traits that we like? They're very disciplined, they're very creative, whatever. What are the traits in other people that you want to develop in yourself? And the final bit, why, is your contribution. And this is where we can start to help people with their careers and what impact do you want to have on the world? For some people, they want to paint and they want to put creativity and artistry in the world. Phenomenal. For other people, they want to build big businesses and employ lots of people. Phenomenal. For other people, they want to have a small business to be able to employ a few people locally and pay salaries and impact people. Whatever that is for you, it's different for everybody. So everybody's happy list is different, which is why it's so ethereal and so difficult to define for people. But once they've gone through that exercise, and here's the trick, sorry. The trick is you got to set a timer and write for 3 minutes, maximum 3 minutes. Because if it's less than 3 minutes, you'll just do the one or two things that are in your head and the easy ones that are top of mind. But you need to force yourself to keep writing in a stream of consciousness for 3 minutes. The reason 3 minutes is it's too long for you to just write one or two things and then sit there for 2 minutes going, oh, this is boring. Keep going. But also 3 minutes is not long enough for your rational brain to kick in and go, oh, that's not rational, that's not realistic or whatever. So you actually get a really interesting insight into some of your subconscious stuff in those 3 minute lists. Once you then find the throughput, then comes the map. The map is your measurable action plan. What are your 2, 3 things that you want to accomplish in the next year, 5 years, 10 years, whatever? And then you break it down into those smaller action steps. And then you start to figure out, what do I need to do? Then this, then this, and this, that gets me to that ultimate goal.
Thank you for sharing the happy work-life math. And there's also a website that we'll put in the links, and you guys can check it out. Um, very, very fun. So books, podcasts, maybe even inspirational movies that have impacted you and helped you?
I mean, there's so many books. The Start with Why was one that really helped me on this path to figuring this out. One that you might not know is a comedian, a British comedian called Jimmy Carr, who had a book launched about a year and a half ago. I just finished listening to it about 2 months ago. It's called Life and Laughter. I think it's a really insightful book. Now, I love stand-up comedy. I think it's a phenomenal art form, but this is anybody who's into crafting stories, messaging, or in any kind of public speaking as well as living life. It's a really, really powerful, impactful book. Mo Godat, I met him last year and have been listening to his stuff recently on Solve for Happy and the Happiness Dilemma and things like that. He's phenomenal. He has an amazing story. You familiar with Mo? So Mo is amazing Egyptian. He ran Google's X Innovation Center, and he lost his son in a tragic accident in a medical mishap, but is helping the world to be happy in memory of his son. A phenomenal, phenomenal story. So Mo Gaudat is his name. What am I listening to at the moment? Who Not How, Dan Sullivan, which I really liked as well. So I'm re-listening to that at the moment.
Very cool. Have you read The Happiness Advantage?
No, I've read recently The Science of Happiness, but I don't know if I've read The Happiness Advantage.
You will love it.
Okay.
You will love it. I got to see him live, and he at Harvard for 12 years studied happiness, and like 80% of Harvard students have been severely depressed within a year, almost always. And so which is crazy. You know, we look at that as that is privilege, right? You know, you're at Harvard, you're privileged. You have nothing to be depressed about. However, that is not the reality. So it's really good stuff.
So I don't know about this book, but one of the examples that sometimes comes up when I'm doing this workshop on the happy work life is, and I talk a little bit about this, of end goals versus means goals. So people who say, "Oh, I want a holiday home in the Bahamas or something like that," and when they get it, they don't feel fulfilled. They don't feel happy. They don't feel that sense. It's because they haven't understood what the holiday home represents, like the end goal of that. Like, it's a space to be able to connect with other people, but if all you're looking for is that house, but you haven't had those connections and you haven't spent time making those connections, then that house is going to be empty. So what it actually represented to you is not feasible. So that's why I get people, and it's the same for the careers. When you're thinking of the careers, don't just think of, I want to be a marketing manager. What is it about that job that makes sense to you? So that's why it's important to go one level deeper, at least.
That was brilliant. That one little riff right there was so powerful, because so often we're chasing, people are climbing the ladder. They climb, they get to the top, and they're like, well, crap, I was on the wrong wall, you know? And so you're saying, let me help you put your ladder on the right wall. Okay. I love it. So this podcast is called Think Your Way to an Epic Life. So what tips or tricks do you have for our folks to help them think their way to an epic life?
Well, it's the same. So if you want, so I love the idea of think your way to an epic life. I love that to have that epic life. But if you if where you want your epic life to be, you also have to understand where you're starting from. So this is what you want, and that's fantastic. But where are you now? What do you need to get you to that point? So understanding who you are, where you are, and what you're good at, that will help you to get to that epic life, because knowing where you're going is one thing, but knowing where you're starting is also equally important.
Absolutely. The GPS cannot work if it doesn't know where you are. So check out his stuff. Thank you so much, Stephen. I appreciate your time immensely. It's been a wonderful podcast.
My pleasure. Thanks very much for having me.